elections. So this year, every year in Alabama, whether it's, state governor or presidential ballot, it's well, I say never a dull moment. But this year, because of the pandemic, a lot of people are electing to do mail-in voting or absentee voting. So
Sure.
in Alabama, we are absentee voting. Can you explain to people what is absentee voting and what's the difference between that and mail-in voting?
Great question, Jarvis. Now look, there's a couple of ways to vote in Alabama, and then we'll talk about universal vote by mail in just a minute as well. In Alabama, on election day, all 1,980 polling sites will be opened on election day. So you can go to your assigned polling location in one of the 67 counties where you live. But if you'd rather vote by mail or vote absentee in person, then you can vote through the absentee process. First and foremost, you have to make the application for an absentee ballot. If you do it in person, you go to the absentee election manager's office, the circuit clerk, you complete the application, you show them your ID, they'll give you a ballot, you'll complete the process by following the instructions, return your ballot to them, they'll put it in a secured lockbox and they'll hold it there until election day. Now, if you prefer to vote by mail through the absentee process, you can download the absentee ballot application at alabamavotes.gov. It comes in a fillable PDF, which you can complete and submit to your absentee election manager, or just get a blank sheet from them or from the computer, complete it, mail it in with a copy of your valid photo ID, and then they will process it. They'll send you your ballot to the location that you requested for it to be returned. You complete your ballot, you put it in the secrecy envelope, put it in the affidavit envelope, and then return it. And when they get it and they process it, they will put it in that secured lockbox and hold it until election day. Now, Alabama is an absentee excuse state. And since we are, you have to provide a reason that you're voting absentee. And the excuse that you should use is the one that I have given all 3,655,528 voters the ability to use during this election cycle, which is the one that says, I'm ill or infirmed and will be unable to appear at my polling site on election day. Also mark the absentee ballot affidavit envelope the very same way, and then your vote will be processed accordingly and counted for the candidate of your choice.
So what are the deadlines for this year's?
Great question. Now, if you register to vote and join the 1,647,294 new voters that we've had in the last 5 years, 8 months, and 5 days, then you want to make sure you're registered by October the 19th. But if you're already registered, you have to make sure you submit your absentee ballot application no later than Thursday, October 29th. Your ballot must be returned to the absentee election manager no later than noon on election day, but it must be postmarked no later than Monday, November the 2nd.
Because I think a lot of times people think on the day of the election, they be like, well, I just mail it in. Well, they're not going to count it that same day. Maybe
No, sir.
And everything. So I want to go back a few moments about, absentee voting and mail-in voting. On the absentee voting, and you can correct me if this is correct or not, it's more secure than the mail-in.
Well, absolutely. There is an authenticated, verified process when you vote absentee by mail, because you have to make application. They have your name. They match your signature. They know your address. They have your ID, and then they accept your ballot and process it accordingly. In universal vote by mail, all 3,655,528 registered voters in Alabama would have a ballot mailed to them without request, and then they would process it if they chose to. That opens up for a lot of fraudulent activity or fraudulent opportunities that are not available through the absentee process.
All right, and like some people, I guess we really need to say this, because in this election time, if you get an absentee vote, you don't need to show to the polls on that day and vote twice, because that's
no. And if you did, though, Jarvis, when you got to the polls, because we've introduced new technology at the polls called the electronic poll book, and when you presented your ID, like this one, They would take your ID and they would scan it. And when they scanned it, it would show that you had already voted absentee. Your name would come up in a different color. You'd be locked out of the equipment and not be able to participate again. If you persisted, then at that point, you would be able to cast a provisional ballot, but your provisional ballot would be discarded 4 days after the election.
Okay, and a lot of times when people do provisional ballots, it's either because sometimes they'll change locations. So
That's right. And sometimes there are verifiable reasons to vote a provisional ballot. The example we just gave would be one where your vote would not count. But if you moved and you had to vote a provisional ballot, that's an example of how your ballot would count if you verified your new address to the registrars no later than the 6th of November, which is 3 days after the election. Those instructions would be given to you at your polling site on election day.
Okay, so
do you know what's happening in Birmingham? Find out now with the all-new What's Happening Birmingham app. Download today on Android, iPhone, and iPad for free. Get info on everything you need to know about local news, events, businesses, restaurants, and more. Visit our website, what'shappeningbirmingham.com, follow us on Twitter at HappeningBham, or call us at 205-538-4508. Download the What's Happening Birmingham app today. What's Happening Birmingham, your source for everything Birmingham.